So, hi, I'm Paul, and I will be reviewing Jeff Deutsch's topic on nutrition, and which is the main claim is existing efforts to improve public diet will fail. And he says that in his first subpoint that consumer tends to underestimate the needs to change their diet. His second point is nutrition labeling for packaged food is ineffective on a mass scale. And his third point is that processed or packaged food form a symbiotic bond between food companies and consumers. So, on the first point, consumers tend to underestimate the need to change their diet. My refutal point is that consumers' change of mindset is actually happening, but is actually at a much slower pace because actually the American Heart Association article says that in a survey, or not in a survey, in a research done, it says that the Obesity Society, done by the Obesity Society and the American Heart Association say that obesity was actually officially considered a disease in November 2013, which in fact informs the public that obesity is actually an issue to be worried about. In which the U.S. Surgeon General, Richard Carmona, says it takes incremental change and it takes a generation to actually get there, in which people are actually finally starting to understand the severity of obesity and is starting to change, which starts with the children, in which Michelle Obama herself began a campaign called Let's Move, which increases healthy start for children, empowers parents and caregivers, it provides healthy foods in schools, and it improves access to healthy and affordable foods, and it increases physical activity, and she began this campaign in February 9 of 2010, and in Consumer Health Day news, the epidemiologist Cynthia Ogden, which is the study of pretty much obesity, and she said that we found among preschoolers 2 to 5-year-olds there was a significant decrease in obesity. Ogden said prevalence of obesity in children that age dipped 14% in 2003 and 2004, about 8% and to about 8% in 2011 to 2012, she noticed, which means that obesity is finally starting to level off and eventually starting to decline. And Jeff's second point was that nutrition labeling for packaged food is ineffective on a massive scale, in which my refutal point is that change is actually, again, slowly developing with the rise of awareness of healthy living, in which in August 1st of this year, actually, FDA actually proposed changes to the nutrition facts label, which required information of added sugars, updated the daily value nutrients, required manufacturers to declare amount of vitamins, and the serving size are actually changed so it's easier for people, so it reflects how people actually eat. And it requires packaged drink, including drinks, that are typically eaten in one sitting be labeled as a single serving. And calories are actually increased in font, which, believe it or not, actually helps with people looking at it. And just to back this up, the FDA consumer update said that more than 54% of consumers read the product's first label by the time they buy the product, and that's a 10% increase from 2002. And basically 2/3 of the people often check how high or low calorie in food as it is in substances such as salt, vitamins, and fat. And in Jeff's in the refutee's third point, he said that packaged or processed food form a symbiotic bond between food company and consumers. During his speech, he never described what the definition or the detailed definition of a processed or packaged food, in which not all processed food are unhealthy, and he did not. An article from the Health U.S. News said that all foods exist on a spectrum of processing, like breakfast cereals and frozen foods that do not contain sauce, sugar, or syrup. In actuality, freezing preserves most vitamins and minerals, and it's actually convenient to store all year round. And Health.us had an article that says that whether processed inherently means unhealthy, and it says that it's more often than not because there's an example of the absorbability of lycopene, which is an antioxidant vitamin, which is actually higher in canned tomato products than from fresh ones. And plain yogurt is actually a form of processed milk, in which it's formed by bacterial cultures, which retains the milk protein and calcium while gaining the benefits of probiotic, gaining probiotic benefits as a result of processing. Yeah, that's it.
All right, Paul, the structural stuff is all good. When you get to the first point, I think you need to summarize your position a little bit more clearly. I think it becomes evident as you're going through the argument that basically it's one of these things that it happens and it simply takes time, and that the advocate's argument has failed to acknowledge that these kinds of changes are taking place. And then you have a whole series of evidence that show that there are changes that are taking place, that people are now aware of the nature of obesity, that there are programs that have been put in place to address these issues. The data that you had that went from the preschools in 2002 until 2011, I thought that sounded like it was probably pretty good data, but it was not read very clearly, and I think it makes your argument effectively. And then you just need to come back to it and say, so, I can't say that people in the past have not or have always been aware, but over in the recent past, especially with kids where obesity is the biggest issue, there's a lot more awareness, a lot more focus on these kinds of things. And then the second point is basically the same kind of argument that says that we are seeing changes when it comes to the way people relate to particularly packaged foods, because you have the FDA changes in labeling and what vitamins and salts and all those kinds of calorie content. There's an argument about a font, which I thought was fantastic. All right. But you've got some statistics on that, for instance, that say that 2/3 of people read these kinds of things. So how can it be true that people are uninformed and they're not acting on the basis of this information if they're reading this information? I think you've got a pretty good argument there. Now, most of this is all counterclaim stuff on your arguments. I think you need to look a little bit more directly at some of the evidence that the advocate talked about, because I don't get much analysis of the advocate's evidence and reasoning here, but your counterclaim is clearly explained. And then the same thing is true on the third point, although you there's that term again, you're burying the claim here, which is that processed does not necessarily mean unhealthy. That's what your claim is here. And you've got it in the argument, but it comes after you present some other information, an explanation. That's what you ought to be starting with. All right, thank you.